He tried stealing my catalytic converter. He instantly regretted it. Scraping woke me before the alarm. Not the familiar rumble of the garbage truck, but a higher-pitched metallic whine, like someone dragging a dull saw across metal. My eyes snapped open, adrenaline already pumping. Sarah, dead to the world beside me, wouldn't hear a bomb go off. I slipped out of bed, grabbed the baseball bat I kept tucked under the mattress. Don't judge. Minneapolis winters are long and you never know, and crept to the window. My prized '67 Mustang, gleaming even under the dim streetlights, was violated. A figure, hunched low, was underneath it, sparks flying. Lenny. I recognized him from the blurry security camera footage the cops had showed us after Mrs. Henderson's Prius got hit last week. Scrawny kid, probably high as a kite. Rage, cold and pure, flooded me. That car, I'd poured years, blood, sweat, and a small fortune into restoring it. Every dent hammered out, every bolt tightened, every gleaming inch a testament to my patience and skill. And this parasite was trying to hack off a chunk of it for a few bucks. I didn't even think. I threw open the front door and charged across the lawn, bat raised. Lenny scrambled out from under the car like a cockroach scattering from the light. He was holding a section of pipe, jaggedly cut, the remnants of my catalytic converter. His eyes widened, pupils like pinpricks. Whoa, man, chill, he stammered, backing away. He reeked of stale cigarettes and desperation. Chill, I roared, my voice cracking. You're sawing my car apart. That's not exactly chill-worthy behavior. He dropped the stolen converter with a clang that echoed in the quiet street. I needed the money, man, just trying to survive. The pathetic excuse only fueled my anger. Survive? By stealing from other people. Get the hell out of here before I brandished the bat. He didn't need a second invitation. He bolted, disappearing down the street, leaving the evidence of his crime scattered on my driveway. I called the cops, fuming. Officer Reynolds, young and eager, showed up promptly, took a report, and dusted for prints. He was sympathetic, but his words were hardly comforting. We'll do our best, Mr. Olson, but these catalytic converter thefts are happening all over the city. It's tough to catch these guys. Tough. Right, that's what I wanted to hear. Detective Miller, a guy with a permanent 5 o'clock shadow and weary eyes, followed up the next day. He was even less optimistic. Look, Mr. Olson, he said, leaning back in my kitchen chair, we're talking about low-level criminals, junkies looking for a quick score. They sell the converters to a fence for maybe 50 bucks. The fence melts them down, extracts the precious metals platinum, palladium, rhodium, and makes a killing. It's a dirty business. It's hard to crack. He explained the cycle: theft, fencing, processing, sale. Each step obscured, each player disposable. He'd seen it 100 times before. We need to catch them in the act, Mr. Olson, and that's not easy. Best thing you can do is park your car in a well-lit area and consider installing an alarm. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. Mark, let the police handle it. You have important projects at work. Don't waste your time on this. I wanted to believe them. I really did. I wanted to go back to my routine work, dinner, tinkering with the Mustang, weekend drives. But the feeling of violation lingered. And then a few days later, Tom, our next-door neighbor, got hit. Then Mrs. Henderson again. The quiet, safe suburban dream was turning into a nightmare. I started doing my own research. The internet was full of stories about catalytic converter thefts. The more I read, the angrier I became. The prices these things fetched were insane. And the consequences for the thieves, if they were even caught, were minimal. A slap on the wrist, maybe a few months in jail. It wasn't a deterrent. I started taking night patrols, walking the neighborhood with my dog, Buster, a golden retriever with a surprisingly intimidating bark. I listened to police scanners, learning the lingo, the hot spots, the patterns. I felt ridiculous, like some wannabe vigilante, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to do something. I upgraded my home security system. Cameras, motion sensors, floodlights. I even started working on some modifications to the Mustang. Nothing illegal, just inconvenient for anyone trying to remove parts without my permission. My engineering background came in handy. Then one evening I saw Lenny again, driving a beat-up, rust bucket pickup truck, creeping slowly down our street. My blood ran cold. He was back. I told Sarah I was going to the store to get milk. I hopped in my truck, a less conspicuous option than the Mustang, and followed him. He drove to a seedy part of town, a maze of warehouses and auto repair shops. He pulled into a scrap metal yard. Morty's Metals, the sign read, in faded paint. I parked across the street, pretending to read a newspaper, and watched. The place looked legitimate enough: piles of scrap metal, a forklift moving things around, guys in overalls welding. But there was something off. The constant flow of traffic, the unmarked trucks, the shifty characters coming and going. It felt like a front. Over the next few days, I staked out Morty's metals. I documented license plates, times, and suspicious activity. I used my telephoto lens to get pictures of the scrap piles, analyzing the metal fragments, identifying pieces of catalytic converters. I brought my findings to Detective Miller. He was impressed, but still hesitant. "Mr. Olson, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is circumstantial. We need concrete evidence." "I can get it," I said, my voice firm. "I just need a chance." Miller sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "Don't do anything stupid, Mr. Olson. This guy, Morty, he's not someone you want to mess with. He has a reputation." Reputation or not, I was done waiting for the system to work. I decided to go undercover. I spent the next day fabricating scrap metal in my garage. Using my welding skills, I created pieces that vaguely resembled parts of a catalytic converter, but were actually worthless. I dressed down in old work clothes, dirtied up my hands, and drove to Morty's Metals. I walked into the office, a dingy, windowless room with a greasy counter and a flickering fluorescent light. A burly man with a shaved head and a menacing glare sat behind the counter. "Marco." "Yeah," he grunted. "I got some scrap I want to sell," I said, trying to sound casual. He eyed me suspiciously. "What kind of scrap?" "You know, catalytic converters, pipes, that kind of stuff." He raised an eyebrow. "Let's see it." I led him outside to my truck and showed him the scrap. He poked at it with his boot, his expression unreadable. "All right," he said finally. "Go talk to Vic." He pointed to a man standing near a forklift, talking on a cell phone. "Vic Morty." He was shorter than I expected, but built like a fire hydrant. He had slicked back hair, a gold chain, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I walked over to him, my heart pounding. "You Vic?" He hung up the phone and turned to me. "That's right. You got something for me." I repeated my story, trying to sound like a desperate seller looking to make a quick buck. He listened intently, his eyes scanning me up and down. "All right," he said finally. "I'll give you $50 for the lot." $50. I'd spent more than that on the welding supplies. But it wasn't about the money. It was about getting inside. I took the offer, pocketed the cash, and started asking questions. About the market, about the suppliers, about the buyers. Vic was surprisingly forthcoming, clearly enjoying the feeling of being in control. Over the next few weeks, I became a regular at Morty's Metals. I learned the ropes, the players, the routines. I confirmed my suspicions the place was a hub for stolen catalytic converters, a black market operation hidden behind a veneer of legitimacy. I saw Lenny there, dropping off his latest haul. He didn't recognize me at first, until I gave him a knowing look. His face went white. I secretly planted GPS trackers on several of the thieves' vehicles, including Lenny's truck. Small, discreet devices that would allow me to monitor their movements. I gathered evidence, documented transactions, and built a case that would be airtight. But Vic was getting suspicious. He started asking me questions, probing my background, testing my loyalty. Marco started following me, a silent, menacing shadow. One afternoon, Vic called me into his office. He closed the door, the click echoing in the small room. "Olson," he said, his voice cold, "I've been checking you out. You ain't who you say you are." My heart pounded in my chest. I knew this was coming. "What are you talking about, Vic?" I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Don't play dumb with me. You're a cop or a snitch or something. I don't like being played." He nodded to Marco, who stepped forward, his massive hands balled into fists. "I don't know what you're talking about," I repeated, stalling for time. "Search him," Vic ordered. Marco grabbed me, roughly patting me down. He found my hidden camera, a small device disguised as a button on my shirt. He held it up for Vic to see. "Looks like we got ourselves a little spy," Vic said, his smile gone. He signaled to Marco, who shoved me against the wall. I knew I was in trouble, serious trouble. But I had a plan. A risky one, but my only chance. "I need Marco in the groin." He grunted and stumbled back, giving me just enough space to move. I grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall and sprayed it directly into Vic's face. Chaos erupted. Vic screamed, blinded by the foam. Marco roared and charged at me. I dodged him and ran for the door, kicking over a stack of metal pipes as I went. I sprinted out of the office and into the yard, dodging forklifts and piles of scrap metal. I knew they'd be right behind me. I reached my truck and jumped inside, fumbling with the keys. I started the engine and peeled out of the yard, tires squealing. Marco came charging out of the office, jumping into a black SUV. He roared after me, the engine of his vehicle echoing in the narrow streets. The chase was on. I knew I couldn't outrun him. He had a faster car, and he knew the area better than I did. But I had one advantage: my knowledge of mechanical engineering. I led him on a wild goose chase through the back streets of Minneapolis, weaving in and out of traffic, making sharp turns, and using my knowledge of the city to my advantage. I knew Marco would try to cut me off to corner me, so I planned accordingly. I drove down a narrow alley, knowing that Marco wouldn't be able to follow me in his SUV. I slammed on the brakes, jumped out of the truck, and ran into a nearby building. It was an abandoned warehouse, dark and dusty. I knew Marco wouldn't follow me inside. He was too cautious. I waited in the shadows, listening to the sound of his SUV circling the block. After a few minutes, he gave up and drove away. I emerged from the warehouse, shaken but alive. I had escaped, but I knew I was far from safe. Vic would be looking for me. I drove straight to Detective Miller's office. I told him everything, showed him the camera footage, and gave him the GPS data from the trackers. He was stunned. He couldn't believe I had pulled it off. "Olson," he said, shaking his head, "you're a crazy son of a bitch, but you got us what we needed." He immediately organized a raid on Moretti's metals. A SWAT team stormed the scrapyard, arresting Vic, Marco, Lenny, and dozens of other individuals involved in the theft ring. They seized mountains of stolen catalytic converters, along with drugs, weapons, and cash. The local news picked up the story, highlighting the bravery of the concerned citizen who helped bring down the operation. They didn't reveal my name, but the neighborhood knew. Vic and Lenny were prosecuted and sentenced. Morty got a long stretch, thanks to the RICO charges. Lenny, facing drug charges and grand theft, rolled on everyone he could. The catalytic converter thefts in the neighborhood ceased. I repaired the minor damage to my Mustang and resumed my normal life. Sarah, initially worried about my actions, expressed her pride in my courage and determination. Old man Hemmings, our busybody neighbor, winked at me and said, "I always knew you were more than just a mechanical engineer, Mark." A few weeks later, I was driving down the street in my Mustang when I saw someone eyeing it with that familiar predatory gaze. It was a young guy, scrawny, nervous looking. He started to reach for the door handle. I pulled up beside him, rolled down the window, and gave him a hard look. "You don't want to do that," I said, my voice low and steady. He hesitated, then backed away, his eyes wide with fear. I smiled, a cold, satisfied smile. That's what I thought. I put the Mustang in gear and drove away, leaving him standing there, wondering what he had just avoided.